He treated her like livestock, stabbing Mary 14 times before dumping her body in a ditch. Mary Hesse was 17, and on that afternoon of March of 1969, she stepped out of her house like any other teen. She had her track shoes on, her hair brushed, and a notebook tucked under her arm. She wasn't looking for danger, and she had no idea that it was waiting for her in a car that pulled up that day. All she wanted was a ride. Maybe a date to the Sadie Hawkins dance. Maybe a normal night like every other kid in Wahoo. But normal wouldn't last. She got into the car with two men she knew. Joseph Ambrose, who was trained to kill livestock at a meat packing plant, and his accomplice, Wayne Greaser. At first, it probably felt innocent. A ride, a favor, a chance to be a part of something. But as they drove towards a secluded spot called The Grove, Mary realized that something was very wrong. She tried to back out, tried to get free, but Joseph blocked her. Panic set in. She bolted from the car, running through the snowy fields, desperate to get away. Joseph chased her, gaining on her with terrifying speed. And then the unthinkable happened. He stabbed her 14 times in the neck, jaw, and jugular, and delivered it with horrifying precision. Every blow methodical. Every moment like he was still thinking of animals on the slaughter line. Her life ended violently and brutally, but the scene left behind left a disturbing touch. Her shoes, her books, and her purse were neatly piled near her body. For decades, the case went cold. Witnesses stayed silent, and leads went nowhere. And Mary's family waited, haunted for answers that never came. It wasn't until 2024, more than 50 years later, that a breakthrough arrived. Her body was exhumed for modern forensic testing. A witness finally spoke up, and Joseph Ambrose, now 77, was arrested. Wayne Greaser had died by suicide decades earlier. Joseph eventually pleaded no contest to conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, and because of the laws in 1969, he only served 2 years. 2 years for a life stolen, a family devastated, and a town left with memories they couldn't forget. What did you guys think about this case? Leave your thoughts in the comments below.
This 17-year-old unalived his parents and was found not guilty. On September 8th of 2024, 17-year-old Colin Griffin called 911 to tell them that he had gotten into an argument with his mother Catherine at his grandmother's house. He claimed that after the argument, his mother fell onto a knife. According to him, his mother was still alive and bleeding from the neck. As Colin was waiting outside for the officers, he was covered in blood. Officers described his demeanor as cool, calm, and collected, which was odd for someone who had just saw their mom fall onto a knife. Once officers went into the home, they found a 12-inch knife with a bloodied 8-inch blade. Witnesses told police that they saw Colin dragging his mom by her hair into the mobile home where she died. Catherine had an autopsy done and revealed that her injuries were non-accidental. Police arrested Colin, and he had actually violated a no-contact order in place against his mother. This was put into place because in November of 2023, Colin and his mother got into an argument which led her to take away his gaming privileges, and he got so angry that he threw her to the floor and stomped on her. Colin had claimed he struck his mother in self-defense, but his grandmother was witnessing the whole thing, and she stated that the attack was unprovoked. In March of 2024, there was another incident between Colin and his mother, which resulted in him going to a mental health facility. On February 5th of this year, the court found Colin not guilty, and his public defender argued that his mother, Catherine, was probably suicidal and she was the one who forced Colin to stab her. Colin not only did this to his mother, but he also did it to his father as well. Colin had lived with his father, Charles, in Lincoln County, Oklahoma until 2023. On February 14th of 2023, Colin had called 911 and told a dispatcher that he had fatally shot his father after his father had pulled out a knife on him and threatened him with it. Police had arrested Colin, but later dismissed the case, stating that it was due to self-defense. So Colin has unalived both of his parents and has been found not guilty. So what do you think about the case?
I posted a video a couple of days ago regarding the body of a Scottish woman being found inside a suitcase in Athens in Greece, and there has been a huge update in the case. A 26-year-old Afghan man has been arrested and charged on the suspicion of Elizabeth's murder. The Greek police have said that he has confessed to moving her body and leaving it in that building. For a quick recap, if nobody saw my original video, Elizabeth Jane Ross, who we now know is known to her friends as Lisa, was 38 years old and was originally from Edinburgh. One of the most heartbreaking details that I think has came out of this case is we have learned more about her as a person and what she done with her life. She was a charity aid worker and she went all around the world helping people who were in a less fortunate position than herself. Her charity work took her all around the world and she arrived in Greece at the end of June after flying from the United States and through Cyprus until she arrived in Athens. When she arrived in Greece, she stayed for around 2 weeks in an Athens suburb. She later left for what police described as an unknown destination, but it is thought to be to stay with American friends in the neighbourhood of Kypseli where she was found. It was 3 days later that that homeless man found her body inside a suitcase inside that derelict building. The man in question was arrested for a few different reasons. The first one was he was caught on CCTV using the bank cards on several ATMs around Athens and taking cash out. They also searched his apartment and found a lot of different types of weapons when they raided his home. It is thought that after the time of death, he was trying to throw off the scent or to stop people looking for her by using her phone to text friends and family saying things along the lines of "I need some time" or "I need to be alone." I don't have an exact motive as to what caused this woman to end up like this. My guess would be that it's a financial motive, considering the bank card was used to take all of the money out of the ATMs. It does make me question as well if she was held for some time before, because how else would they know the PIN number? She was currently working with a Greek organisation that helped refugees from Afghanistan and Iran. There's still not a cause of death in this case that has been released as of yet because there was no clear signs of injury or a struggle. The authorities are still awaiting the toxicology findings and further analysis of tissue samples. However, a couple of articles have stated that it is believed that she could have been suffocated or smothered. There's been lots of tributes and flowers placed outside that abandoned building where her body was found, and one note read, quote, "Here lies an angel." A friend from Edinburgh used similar words in their interview to The Guardian, saying, quote, "We lost an angel. She was full of innocence and kindness and she only wanted to help people wherever she went." One thing I just can't wrap my head around in this case is this woman was a devout Christian. She spent her whole life, not just in Greece, but all over the world helping people as a charity worker. And the fact that she has ended up like this is honestly just so heartbreaking. Honestly, I just find this case absolutely heartbreaking. You can even tell by looking at her picture, she just looks like such a good soul, and honestly, out of everybody in the world, she did not deserve to be taken the way that she did.
She tortured her for 12 days and then barbecued her like chicken. Sabrina Koider was obsessed with herself and believed that she deserved to be famous for doing nothing. Sabrina and Oysam Meduni had an on and off relationship. Sabrina cheated on Oysam non-stop and even beat and slapped him, but he always took her back. Sabrina and Oysam hired 21-year-old Sophie Leonette to be their live-in nanny and take care of their children. Sabrina was so self-obsessed and delusional that she believed her ex-boyfriend sent Sophie there to spy on them. Sabrina believed that Sophie was there to SA all of them and use black magic on them. None of this was true, by the way. For 12 days straight, Sabrina and Oysam tortured Sophie. They beat her with electrical cables, breaking her bones. They starved her, waterboarded her, and even drowned her, which unalived Sophie. The couple threw Sophie's body in a bonfire and started barbecuing chicken next to her. They even threw a few pieces of chicken on top of Sophie's body to make everything seem less suspicious. Neighbors began to notice a horrible smell coming from the fire, so they called the police. Firefighters noticed a human nose and human fingers inside the bonfire. The couple was sentenced to life in prison and must each serve a minimum of 30 years before they're even considered for parole. Sabrina did actually end up getting exactly what she wanted. She is famous now, but not because of her looks, but instead because of her evil, vile personality and actions. What do you guys think about this case?
He begged the police to find her, while her lifeless body was already hidden behind the home. On September 12, 2024, in Sandusky, Ohio, 30-year-old Devin O'Brien called police and claimed something unthinkable. His girlfriend's 3-year-old daughter, Charlotte Patterson, had been taken. He said he'd fallen asleep, and when he woke up, she and even the family dog were just gone. But even in that moment, something didn't sit right, because when officers arrived, this didn't feel like a frantic search for a missing child. It felt staged, and that feeling would only get stronger. Police began looking around the property, focusing on the small mobile home and the shed behind it. It was closed, too close to overlook. Inside that shed, on a high shelf, they found a black tote bag, and inside that bag was Charlotte, a 3-year-old baby hidden and placed somewhere no child should ever be. At that point, the entire story collapsed, because this was never a kidnapping, it was a cover-up. The autopsy would later reveal the full horror. Charlotte died from strangulation and blunt force trauma, and investigators confirmed something that was even more disturbing: clear evidence of sexual assault. This wasn't panic, this wasn't confusion, this was calculated. And Devon's behavior after, it only made things worse. During questioning, he didn't act like someone desperate to find a missing child. Instead, he started talking about demons and holy wars and strange sensations, almost like he was trying to build a narrative in real time. But detectives weren't buying it. They described his behavior as performative, like he was testing reactions and adjusting his story. Because here's the thing, people in genuine distress don't carefully construct stories. They break. And Devon didn't break. He pivoted. First, it was a kidnapping, then vague accusations, then the supernatural explanation, and none of it, and I mean none of it, made sense. And the biggest problem? The evidence never supported him. Charlotte had been in his sole care. Her body was hidden on a property that he controlled, and the timeline he gave was full of holes. Even more chilling, after his arrest, his own family came forward, revealing a history of violence that painted a much darker picture of who he really was. And according to his sister, there was plenty of signs. In December of 2025, Devon O'Brien pleaded guilty to aggravated murder, avoiding the death penalty, but receiving life in prison without parole. What did you guys think about this case? Leave your thoughts in the comments below.
This first grade teacher was shot in the middle of her classroom by one of her 6-year-old students. Abby Zwerner always knew that she wanted to be a teacher. The fall of 2022 was the start of her 3rd year teaching first grade at Rich Neck Elementary School in Virginia. And this year, Abby had one extremely difficult student in her class, a 6-year-old boy that we will call JT. JT had severe academic and behavioral issues. He was known to swear at teachers and other students, as well as physically attack his teachers and the other students. There were instances of him spitting on people, attacking people, like kicking them, punching them. On one day, he tried to strangle a teacher, and then there was another day where he was chasing around his classmates at recess with a belt, trying to hit them with it. There were also reports of this 6-year-old boy telling some of his classmates that at home he would smoke his mother's. It was definitely clear that JT wasn't being watched at home as much as he should have been, because there are at least 2 instances that we know of, because there are police reports that this 6-year-old boy would go into his mother's purse, take her car keys, and then get into her car before anyone found out. On the first instance, he got into the car and then locked himself in the car, and the police had to come and break a window to get him out. And on the second instance, he actually got into the car, started it, and started driving the car before crashing it into some other parked cars. Thankfully, no one was hurt. Over the Christmas break 2022, so only a few months after that school year started, JT's mother, 26-year-old Deja Taylor, suspected that her son's father was cheating on her. So she went, bought a weapon, and then used it to shoot at her boyfriend, her son's father, and the suspected mistress. Thankfully, no one was hurt, but the police and the school were not notified of this happening. When school started back up again after the holiday break in January of 2023, Abby could tell that her student JT was still having a lot of issues. On January 4th, JT stole his teacher Abby's phone, threw it on the ground as hard as he could, which shattered the phone, and then he called his teacher Abby a bitch. For this, JT was suspended from school for 1 day. On January 6, 2023, this 6-year-old boy, first grade student, returned to school. after stealing his mother's loaded gun that she always kept in her purse. That morning, JT's teacher, Abby, could tell that JT was still really upset with her about getting in trouble and getting suspended, and he was making some weird threats towards her and the other students. So around 11:20 that morning, Abby went down to the vice principal's office and asked for some help with JT. Reportedly, the vice principal of this elementary school, Dr. Parker, was quite known for being very dismissive with teachers' concerns, and she just brushed off Abby, told her to go back to class without even really talking to her. But then about 20 minutes later, Dr. Parker has a change of heart. She tells one of the school staff members, Miss Kovac, that Miss Kovac could go down to Abby's classroom and tell Abby that she could call JT's mom and have JT's mom come pick him up for the day. So Miss Kovac was walking down to Abby's classroom around 11:45 that morning, and she passes by two female students that were visibly very shooken up and upset. She asked these students what's wrong, and that's when these students told Miss Kovac that JT had a gun. Miss Kovac enters Abby's classroom. She goes up to JT's desk. She whispers in his ear that she heard what he brought to school, and she asks JT if she can go through his backpack, and he says no. So Miss Kovac goes to the vice principal, Dr. Parker, and tells her 2 times what these students are saying JT has in his backpack, and both times the vice principal dismissed her. During recess, JT left his backpack in the classroom, so Miss Kovac and Abby both went through his backpack, but there was no weapon in the backpack. But Abby did say that she saw JT grab something out of his bag before he went to recess. During recess, one of the teachers could see that JT was kind of hiding behind a wall, and he was showing something to another boy. So this teacher went up to the boy and asked this boy, "What did JT show you?" This boy immediately starts crying and says that JT showed him the weapon and then threatened to kill him if he told anyone. 2 more times, the vice principal, Dr. Parker, was reportedly told what JT supposedly brought to school, and both times she dismissed these concerned teachers and just told them that JT's mother was on the way to come pick him up, and when JT's mother got here, they would deal with it. Staff also asked the vice principal if they could physically check JT's person, and the vice principal told them no. And then around 2 p.m. in the middle of class, completely unprovoked, this 6-year-old boy, JT, stands up. He takes out the weapon. He shoots his teacher, Abby. He shot her in the left hand and in the chest, only 2 centimeters away from her heart. And somehow, even after being shot in the chest, this 25-year-old teacher, Abby, still found the strength to get all of the other students out of the class and into the hallway away from JT and the weapon. And other teachers that heard what was happening during the day and knew what JT supposedly brought to school now heard this shot ring out. They start rushing to Abby's classroom and they call 911. Miss Kovac was there with JT, trying to kind of keep him there before the police arrived. And when the police arrived, JT punched Miss Kovac in the face and then tried running away, but the police caught up to him. Abby was rushed to the hospital. She had a collapsed lung. She needed 6 different surgeries. Her left hand will never be fully functional ever again. She still has bullet fragments in her chest, but she survived. Following this, obviously, Abby left her position as a first grade teacher at Rich Neck Elementary School. This is something that makes her very sad to this day. She loved teaching. She loved her students, but she has this extreme trauma and PTSD. The principal of the elementary school was reassigned to a different school, and the vice principal, Dr. Parker, left her position altogether. The elementary school was closed for a few weeks. And then before it reopened, they repainted the classroom where Abby was shot in. They also put metal detectors in the school. JT's mother, Deja Taylor, received a handful of charges, which she pled guilty to, and she received a little under 4 years in prison with 2 additional years of probation. Reportedly, JT has been living with his great-grandfather ever since this happened, and this is a much healthier place for him to grow up. And ever since living with his great-grandfather, his behavior has completely changed, and his teachers at his new school said that they've had 0 issues with him. And Abby ended up suing the vice principal, Dr. Parker, for gross negligence, where she was awarded $10 million in November of 2025. Dr. Ebony Parker, the vice principal that dismissed concerns about 6 different times that day that the student brought a weapon to school, was also facing criminal charges. She was facing 8 separate felony counts of child neglect for the 8 bullets that were in the weapon that could have killed 8 different students. And she was facing 40 years in prison. But in May of 2026, so not that long ago, the judge dismissed all criminal charges against the vice principal. This is such an absolutely insane case that it doesn't even seem real. This is a 6-year-old. He had just started 1st grade. He just left kindergarten. It's absolutely insane. But the fact that something like this could even happen is why it's so important to talk about it, to spread awareness. So hopefully something like this never ever happens again. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments on this one, guys, but please remember to be respectful because we are dealing with children in this case. But please also be respectful for the victim, Abby. Please, I just want her to be doing so much better. I know she's really been struggling the last handful of years since this happened, and I wish all the best for her. While you're in the comments, please let me know what case you want to see me cover next. Thank you to everyone that suggested that we covered this case, and I will see you guys all next time in my next video. Please be a good person to your fellow person.
His attackers used his head as a soccer ball. 15-year-old Michael Moss lived in Liverpool, had a happy childhood, and had an interest in mechanics. His mother stated that he wasn't very academic, but he could take a bike apart and put it back together, and he really loved motorbikes. When Michael was only 11 years old, his father passed away and his whole world was turned upside down. He was deeply affected by his father's death, and quickly at school, his behavior became disruptive and he was excluded. Because of that, Michael started attending a pupil referral unit that helped children with special educational needs before he was sent to a children's home to give his mother a break. It was there in 1999 when Michael would meet his future killers, his bullies, Alan, Mark, and Graham. Michael tried to keep a distance from these boys, but when he started dating Alan's ex-girlfriend, things would take a turn. Alan was not happy about this, and he would do anything to get revenge. Those 3 boys got together, drank alcohol, and watched Quentin Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs and got a plan into action. At 1 in the morning, Michael got a phone call from those 3 boys that they had a motorbike and they wanted him to look at it, and since he had a love for motorbikes, he was not going to say no, so unfortunately, he fatally took the bait. Michael had left the children's home where he was staying at and arrived at Moss Lane Park, and this is when he was ambushed. The 3 boys laid Michael on the floor and they each took turns kicking his head like a soccer ball. Michael's injuries were so severe that he was just unrecognizable. Michael did pass away from his injuries, and once his mother found out what had happened to him, she was heartbroken. As the investigation started, there was already evidence against the 3 boys, and Graham had actually turned himself in after he had told his mother what he had did as well as the other boys. July 26 of 2000, the 3 boys were found guilty. Alan and Mark were sentenced to 10 years in prison, while Graham was sentenced to 9 years.
Hi. Wait, don't get scared. I'm not doing ASMR. Let me just do my intro and then I'm going to explain the mic situation. The Amber Alert that we all know was created after this little girl vanished in broad daylight, taken off her bike and into a stranger's car. On Saturday, January 13th of 1996, 911 received a call from a 78-year-old man named Jimmy. He called to report that he had seen a little girl riding her bike in an empty parking lot when he saw a black truck pull up next to her. A man got out of the truck, grabbed the little girl, shoved her inside of the truck and drove away. That little girl would never be seen alive again. Alright, let's address the elephant in the room, this guy. It turns out that sometimes in these cases I get a little bit too angry and I start yelling, and I can't yell because I have neighbors. So what did we do? We got a mic. It is kind of giving ASMR and I don't particularly love that you could see the cord here, but we're working with what we have. Hopefully next video you will not see a cord. I'm not gonna lie, this is making me feel a little bit vulnerable because it's like you are up and close and personal into my face, but I kind of love it too. It's a little bit romantic. Hey. Okay, let's get into it. Amber Hagerman was a 9-year-old girl who lived in Arlington, Texas with her family. Her mother, Donna, was told in the past that she would not be able to have kids of her own, so when she fell pregnant with Amber, although it wasn't planned, it was still a massive blessing to her. Donna also went on to have a second child, Amber's little brother named Ricky. The father was awful. He treated Donna terribly, so she left him. She picked up her 2 kids, packed up as much as she could, left the father, and basically went to go seek housing in a women's shelter. And even though Donna was not in the most ideal situation, she still wanted to do what she could to try and make her kids' lives as best as possible. As a child, Amber was described as silly, creative, thoughtful, smart. She was always on the A and B honor roll at school. She was just honestly the cutest little girl. She loved to draw pictures for her mom, write her letters. Her mom was her best friend. She also loved to play Barbies, and one of her other favorite hobbies was riding bikes with her little brother, who she also completely adored. And that's exactly what they did on Saturday, January 13th of 1996. The kids were over at their grandparents' house. Amber and Ricky were very excited about Amber's new bike that she had just gotten as a Christmas gift, a brand new pink bike. That Saturday, her and Ricky asked their grandmother if they could ride around the neighborhood. The grandmother said yes, of course, as long as they stayed close to the house and only inside of the neighborhood. The kids agreed, and at 3:10 p.m. off they went. Again, they left the house at 3:10 p.m. By 3:18 p.m., Ricky was already back at the grandmother's house, but Amber was not. When the grandmother asked Ricky where Amber was, Ricky said that he didn't know, that he was riding ahead of her and thought that she was following him. But when he did eventually turn around, Amber wasn't there and he didn't see what happened to her. The grandmother was worried sick because she didn't know if she was overreacting and if Amber was going to walk through that door in the next 5 minutes, or if Amber wasn't back yet because something horrible happened to her. It was then when 78-year-old Jimmy made the call to the police to say that he thought he just saw a kidnapping happen in front of his eyes. Jimmy was the one and only witness to see Amber being taken. Everything happened so fast, but Jimmy told officers that he could tell that something was wrong because when the man picked up Amber, Amber started kicking and screaming. She looked terrified. It was obvious that she did not know the man that was holding on to her. Even though the abduction happened right across the street from Jimmy, he couldn't see much. In regards to the kidnapper, all he could tell is that he was a man, but he was able to give police a description of the black truck. Amber's grandfather went to the empty parking lot looking for Amber, and that is when he saw Jimmy, the elderly neighbor man, as well as Amber's pink bike, but no Amber. That is when Jimmy informed him and told him everything that he had just seen, that he saw Amber get taken, that he called the police, and soon Amber's mother Donna would be informed of everything as well. Now remember, this was in the 90s. Technology back then was not as useful in these cases as it is now because they didn't have the resources they needed to follow up on crimes like we do now. So even though they had a vague description of the kidnapper, of the truck, the exact location, the exact time, it was difficult to spread awareness of the missing little girl to everyone around so that they could have the most amount of eyes as possible, looking out for Amber, looking out for the black truck, anything that may help. They did do what they could. The case was on the news and it was heavily reported on. People were trying to help, putting up posters, doing what they could, looking for clues, but sadly, the search for Amber would not last long because 4 days after she was taken, her body was found in a nearby creek. On Wednesday, January 17th of 1996, a man called the police to say that he was walking his dog and found a deceased body of a little girl. The body was confirmed to be that of 9-year-old Amber Hagerman. Her body was in horrible condition. It was completely unclothed apart from one sock on her left foot. And this next part is gruesome, but this is a quote from a detective on scene. Quote, "We rolled her over and I caught her head in my hands. Several lacerations to her throat. A knife had been used to rip her throat out. That was the injury that ultimately was ruled to be the cause of death, and in heartbreaking detail, they were also able to tell that whatever happened to her did not happen to her straight away because it was showed on the autopsy that Amber was alive for 2 whole days after she was taken. So she suffered, and that is heartbreaking to think about. Amber's mother asked to see her to be able to say goodbye and because she wanted to hold her baby in her arms one last time. But the officers denied her because they told her they could not allow any mother to see their child in that condition that Amber was in. They said that Amber didn't even look like Amber anymore, which again is extremely heartbreaking. Amber's funeral was held January 20th of 1996, and as sad as it was beautiful at the same time to see how many people came together to support Amber's family. Diana Simone, a Texas resident who had been following the news and following Amber's case closely, contacted news stations and proposed this new idea of how to engage passerbyers, helping locate missing children. Her idea was to spread news of a missing child like they already spread news and alerts about the weather. So anytime there was a report of a kidnapping or a missing child made to the police, that would go to broadcast stations and they would interrupt any broadcasting they were showing to show an alert about the missing child and a description of a vehicle or anything else that might be beneficial for people to be on the lookout for. This was put into effect in 1998. Diana originally wanted this to be called Amber's Plan, but as we know now, it is referred to as an Amber Alert, and it really is an incredible thing. This has been used to help a lot of cases. But back to Amber's investigation, the detectives didn't really have much to go off. Any lead they followed led nowhere, and they really began to feel stuck. Now it has been 28 years, and we still have no answers. I have read that the Arlington Police Department is still investigating every tip they receive, that they have been in contact with crime labs to see if any new forensic technologies can help, and that police police are still hopeful that there could be a breakthrough in the case, but it is so shocking to me. 28 years, there has been 0 suspects. Not one person has ever been named as a person of interest that I know of, to my knowledge at least, but this is a case that I need to see justice on. It doesn't make sense in my head. Literally think about the amount of people that you see every single day in public, not people that you know, just people that you see, and you're telling me that obviously they left her in a creek and nobody saw anything. I find that impossible to believe. I want to end this video with a letter that Amber's mom wrote herself to Amber's kidnapper. He wrote this in April 8th of 1996. To read this, I am going to have to get a little bit up close and personal. I hope you guys don't mind. But it reads, "To Amber Hagerman's killers, you can't hide forever. You will not get away with this. You stole my little girl from me, my best friend. You did a very horrible act. I hope to you are satisfied. My little girl did nothing to you. Why did you terrify her? Why did you take her clothing from her? Why did you touch her where you were not supposed to? Why did you hurt her? And most of all, why did you kill her?" I'm going to tell you a little bit about my daughter. Amber was a 9-year-old Girl Scout. Amber made A's and B's in the 3rd grade. She had a perfect attendance and citizenship awards. Amber was a very loved child. She was smart, kind-hearted, and helpful too. I have told you enough about my little girl. Now let's hear about you. Do you have a family? Does your family know what you did to my little girl? What made you decide to take my little girl? When did you take her? When did you decide to take little Amber's life? And when did you put her lifeless little body in the creek? Let me ask you one more thing. How could you look into my little girl's tearful eyes and do what you did? Remember, there is one person who saw you do this horrible act, and that one person is God. Signed, Amber Hagerman's mommy, Donna Whitson. It gives me chills every single time I read that, and it makes me want to cry. That is all I have for this case. Let me know what your thoughts are on it. It is, again, just unbelievable to me that we have no answers. But that is it for me today. Thank you for spending time with me and for listening to Amber's story. I hope you guys are all having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Happy New Year. Stay safe. I love you all very, very much. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you. Are you going to be able to hear my kiss? Oh, sorry. Did I make you shy too? Okay, bye.
This woman murdered her 3 children with exercise bands, and the debate right now is not whether she done it or not. She did do it. The question though is, was this postpartum psychosis that was totally unnoticed and a woman who was screaming for help? Or was this a cold-blooded, premeditated murder? This is the case that is blown up in America right now and pretty much all over the world. This is the case of Lindsay Clancy and the murder of her children, Cora, Dawson and Callan. It was January in 2023 in a quiet coastal town of Duxbury, Massachusetts. A mum who had spent her career helping bring babies into the world ended the lives of her own 3 children. Lindsay Clancy was a labour and delivery nurse. She was also the mother of 5-year-old Cora, 3-year-old Dawson and just 8-month-old baby Callan. What actually happened that night isn't being disputed right now. We know what happened. It's why it happened that is causing this fight in the courtroom right now. So Lindsay Clancy and her husband Patrick lived what looked like to anybody else as a normal family life in Duxbury of South Boston. She worked at Massachusetts General Hospital as a labour and delivery nurse, and after the birth of their 3rd child Callan, things began to go a bit downhill. Callan was born in 2022, and in the months that followed his birth, Lindsay sought help multiple times for various different things. For example, anxiety, depression, sleep problems, and what the defence would later testify as psychotic symptoms such as postpartum psychosis. Now, currently in court, we are seeing that court records and testimony are showing that she was prescribed a long list of psychiatric medications over a long period of time by multiple different providers. These included antidepressants, anti-anxiety drugs, sleep aids, and a lot of other medications. Reports have put the number of different medications prescribed to her at around 13, and with more than 30 prescriptions filed. So she was on a lot of different medication that was changing all of the time from different providers, and it seems as though nobody was really taking her serious. That is just my personal opinion. I feel like we see this all the time, not just with postpartum women, but women in general. You are just given a tablet and told to go on your way. There is no actual support and help given to anybody. The prosecutors are arguing that she only took a fraction of what she prescribed, but the defence said that she was actually over-medicated, bouncing between providers, bouncing between medications, and just in a complete state of crisis. What actually happened on that fateful and tragic night? On the evening of January 24th, 2023, Lindsay had asked Patrick to go and run an errand. She had essentially either ordered a takeout or asked him to go and pick up a takeout, along with medication for one of the children. This trip in total was only supposed to take between 25 and 30 minutes before Patrick would be back in the house. While her husband Patrick was gone and out of the house, house, she strangled all 3 of her children using exercise resistance bands. First responders who attended the scene described clear signs of ligature strangulation. Cora and Dawson were pronounced dead on that day, and sadly Callan, the baby, was placed on life support but died 3 days later after this attack. After she had taken the lives of her children, Lindsay then attempted to take her own life. She cut her wrists and her neck and jumped from a second-story window of their home. That fall has actually left her partially paralysed to this day. Patrick then returned home, found his wife injured in the garden, then asked where the children were. That is when he found the children in the basement. He then called 911 in a state of pure distress and anguish. That call was played in court. If I can insert it, I will here. Lindsay Clancy was then arrested and was charged with 3 counts of murder and related strangulation charges, and she pleaded not guilty. Her defence does not deny that she killed the children. They know that she killed the children. Everybody knows that. She knows that, her husband knows that, her family knows that, the public knows that. They are arguing though that she was not criminally responsible because she was suffering from postpartum psychosis, a rare but severe psychiatric condition that can involve delusions, hallucinations and a complete break from reality. Essentially, when you're in this, you don't know this until you're out of it. That is what I've read anyway. You can be hearing voices, you can be believing things that are true or aren't true, and you genuinely don't know that you're going through this mental health episode until you come out of it and realise it looking back, if that makes sense. The defence has also pointed towards symptoms of potential bipolar, extreme mental decline, and the effects of the medication that she had been prescribed and bounced between for months and years on end. The prosecution though is painting a completely different picture. They are saying that the act was completely calculated, that she created that window of time by sending her husband out to run that errand and then carried out the killings with premeditation. The prosecution argue that she is criminally responsible. This is blown up so much within the media right now. You've probably seen it all over your For You pages on every social media platform, and that is because the murder trial actually began in July of 2026 in Plymouth Superior Court. This is coming more than 3 years after the death, and Lindsay has appeared in court in a wheelchair due to her injuries. Within the last little while, Patrick Clancy, her husband, has took the stand and has described a downward spiral in the months before the killings, describing her mental health struggles and the day of the killings. Jurors have heard the 911 call and first responders have testified about what they found when they got to the house. Doctors who treated the children were also taking the stand, and jurors even visited the former family home so that they could see the layout of the home for themselves. I honestly think this case could be one of those cases that make a real difference. This case has already put a very rare mental health condition in a national and almost a global spotlight. Postpartum psychosis is far less common than postnatal depression. I think now we are going to see a lot more women coming forward, sharing their stories and just being more open about it, because it seems to be one of those things that still have a massive stigma attached to it, and people sometimes don't want to seek help for the fear of being judged. Another main thing I've seen a lot of women saying is that they didn't want to seek help in case their children were taken off them. The defence is obviously arguing and claiming that Lindsay was in a complete grip with psychosis, and again the prosecution is painting the picture that the intent was present. This case for me though has just raised so many different questions. For one, how do we properly treat severe postpartum mental illnesses? A new parent seeks help and then is constantly given different medications by different providers. Who is then responsible for their care? Who has the responsibility over this patient, and should somebody not be taking charge? It also begs the question as well, how do courts decide whether someone who commits a completely unthinkable crime was actually capable of understanding what they were doing? I feel like this is a scary decision as well, because this could be used and abused in so many different ways, and I don't honestly know if there's a way to prove for sure either way. I think especially in this case though, with so much build up to it, so many medications being prescribed, and also how much she was crying out for help, it does make me lean towards the side that this was psychosis. Her husband Patrick Clancy has publicly spoken out saying that he gives forgiveness for what she has done. He is also pursuing civil action related to her medical care that she received from these companies. The criminal case though is remaining to focus on whether Lindsay is actually legally responsible for the deaths of Cora, Dawson and Callan. In this case though, I personally think there is absolutely no winner regardless of what way it goes. 3 children have lost their lives and 2 parents have lost their children. It's especially difficult when the perpetrator or the person who was responsible for those deaths was the mother. The trial is still ongoing right now as of August of 2026. There is more medical and expert testimony expected in the next couple of weeks, so I will give you an update on that when I have it. Everybody that I have seen commenting on this case is split pretty much 50-50, with half the people thinking that she knew what she was doing and half the people advocating for women's mental health. As I said, I don't really like to give my opinions much when I cover these cases, but with all of her medical history and suffering from mental health myself, not directly as bad as she was, but I still know what it's like to not be believed and just have tablets thrown at you, so I do lean towards the side that she actually was suffering with psychosis. If you or someone that you know is suffering with postpartum depression or postnatal psychosis, please contact an emergency help service. Please reach out for some professional help. I will put some numbers on the screen. Thank you all so much for being here and watching. Please leave me a comment down below on what you personally think has happened in this case. Look after yourself, and I will see you in the next one, and I will give you an update when there is one.
She was kidnapped while she was on the phone with her fiance, and then minutes later he would pass the truck she was in and heard her screaming. What happened to Angela Hammond? Angela Marie Hammond, who went by Angie, was 20 years old and living in Clinton, Missouri in 1991. She worked at a bank and was taking classes at Central Missouri State University. She was described as outgoing and popular and was at a point in her life where she had a lot to look forward to. She was actually 4 months pregnant, and she was engaged to her fiance, Rob. On the evening of April 5th, 1991, Angie and Rob went to a barbecue together, and then around 10 p.m., Angie dropped Rob off at his parents' house as he had to watch his younger brother for a little bit, and they planned to talk on the phone later, as well as once Rob's mom got home, they were gonna meet up and hang out again. Angie would go spend time with a friend before eventually heading to downtown Clinton, where around 11:15 p.m., she would use a payphone to call Rob, and this payphone was by 2nd and Jefferson Streets, which was about 7 blocks from Rob's home. And at first, the conversation was just completely normal. But while on the phone, Angie would mention that an older model green Ford pickup truck kept circling the block, and then it made her nervous because it parked right by the payphone. Angie would describe this to be a filthy bearded man. He walked towards the phone booth and then used the phone that was directly beside Angie, and then he didn't talk to anybody. He just got back in his truck where she could see that he had a flashlight and was looking for something. So Rob thought, well, maybe he really needs to talk to somebody and the phone's not working, so just ask him, and if he needs it, we can get off the phone for now. The man would just say that he didn't need it right now, so Angie and Rob just kept talking about something else until everything changed. Rob would hear Angie scream, so he just got in his car and started driving towards the payphone because he knew he was only 7 blocks away. On the way, he would see the green Ford pickup truck that matched Angie's description, and then as he passed them, he heard someone yell Robbie, and he knows that it was Angie's voice, so he just threw his car into reverse, turned around, and started chasing him. But he only made it 2 miles because when he threw his car into reverse, it damaged the transmission and his car broke down. Rob watched the truck turn and disappear into the night, and Angie was just gone. I can't even imagine what he was feeling in that moment. Investigators searched everywhere, and they started looking for that truck because they pretty much knew exactly what they were looking for. Rob even saw a decal on the back of the truck of a fish jumping out of water, so it couldn't be that hard to track it down, right? The Missouri State Highway Patrol started searching for registered vehicles that matched this description, and they were able to match it to approximately 1,600 vehicles that could potentially fit the description, but they were never able to narrow it down to what truck was involved in Angie's disappearance. Rob was initially considered a suspect, but they were able to rule him out. Investigators began looking at whether Angie's case was connected to other missing women in the state. Just a few months earlier, 42-year-old Trudy Darby disappeared from the convenience store that she worked at in Max Creek. Her body was found 2 days later in a river. In February 1991, 30-year-old Cheryl Ann Kenny disappeared from the convenience store that she worked at in Nevada, Missouri. There were some similarities in the cases, but investigators were never able to establish enough evidence to fully connect them. Trudy's case would be solved, but Angie and Cheryl's case remained unsolved. But 30 years later, investigators have revealed a completely different theory. The theory revolves around mistaken identity. Police disclosed that a confidential informant who was involved in a narcotics investigation had received a threatening letter on April 4th, 1991, the exact day that Angie Hammond went missing. And this informant had a daughter named Angela who lived in Clinton and looked similar to Angie Hammond. Investigators believe someone connected to the operation intended to abduct the informant's daughter, Angela, but ended up abducting Angela Hammond instead. There's been no definitive proof yet of what exactly happened, though, or who took Angela. As of August 2026, Angela Marie Hammond remains missing. And this case is so bizarre. Her fiance was on the phone with her as this was happening, and even past the truck she was in. I'm sure this case just absolutely has haunted him. But if you or anybody you know has any information regarding the disappearance of Angie Hammond, you can contact the Clinton Police Department. Thank you for listening to Angie's story. Be sure to follow for more true crime, and if you have any case recommendations, feel free to comment, directly message me, or fill out the suggested case form in my link tree in my bio.